Hey guys, so we're going to be going over the Python Crash Course 2nd edition book here, and I'm looking at chapter 2, variables and simple data types. So the first thing they want us to do here is to print hello world, hello Python world. So let's go ahead and open up Sublime so we can get started with this. I'm going to just type sub L, and that's going to bring up Sublime text editor. I'm using Linux. So if you're using Windows, you may have to open it through the command prompt. Okay. Next, I'm gonna go ahead and type in the string they want us to print. So print hello Python world exclamation. All right, so what's happening here is we're just telling it to print this text here. Anything within the quotation marks will be recognized as a string, will be printed. So what we're going to do is I'm going to type control, or I'm going to hold the control B key at the same time, control B. And as you see down here, it says hello Python world. So that's where it's going to print out to, right down here. Okay. Okay, so we just printed a string. Let's go ahead and follow page 16 variables. So let's just delete this, control A, delete. I'm gonna type in message equals hello Python world. Right. Print message. Okay. And then I'm gonna type control, or actually hold the control and the B key at the same time. And as you see, it did the same exact thing, except this time we used a variable. Variable is kind of like a container, so you can think of this as, just having the hello world string, and then taking that and putting it inside of a container, right, in the message container. And now whenever we refer to hello Python world, we're also referring to our variable here, message. So now we're going to print that message that holds this string, and that's what it does, right? So not to overcomplicate things, a variable holds data in it, like strings, in this case, hello Python world. And when we print that variable, we're printing out whatever's inside of that container. So in this case, message holds hello Python world. So that's what's being displayed. Okay, let's go ahead and move on. It says message hello Python crash course world. Let's go ahead and type that in here. So, leave Python crash course. Oh, oops. Right. Exclamation. There we go. Hold the control B key, and they're just printed hello Python crash course world down there. All right. Now, then it asks us to replicate an error. So we can do that by simply going here to our variable message, deleting an S, trying to print that out. Now it's prompting us an error because it doesn't know what to print, right? This is a message, it's missing an S. So that variable isn't the same as this one. So it doesn't know what it's supposed to print, right? But if we put an S here, try printing it, it works, right? So we just replicated an error and what that would look like. Let's see here, print message. It's also a string. All right. All right, so the next thing we're going to do is a try yourself. We're simply going to print out a message and then print out another message. So that's basically what I did here. You know, you have the first message, hello Python Crash Course World, print message. And if I did a Control B, you'd see that here, hello Python Crash Course World. And then below that, I put another message, thank you for joining me. And you can see, thank you for joining me there. All right, and strings. So a string is anything between quotes. By default, whatever you put in the quotes is going to be seen as a string, right? So here we have, this is a string, and I put string 1, and then I printed string 1. Okay, so that's what we see down here. This is a string. String 2, this is also a string. I put that inside my container, my variable, string 2, and I printed that out. This is also a string here, right down here. All right, so let's go ahead and flip over to page 19. And actually, let's go and switch over to page 20 here. Change case in a string with methods. All right, so let's go over what a method is and what we're doing here, okay? Okay, so methods are simply another kind of function that reside in classes. You create and work with methods in Python in precisely the same way that you do with functions, except that methods are always associated with classes. You can create two kinds of methods, those associated with the class itself and those associated with an instance of a class. It's important to differentiate between the two. Creating class methods. A class method is one that you execute directly from the class without creating an instance of the class. Sometimes you need to create methods that execute from the class, such as the functions you use with the string class to modify strings. The following steps will show you how to create and use class method. Okay, so here I've already typed in the code. And as you see, you have class, my class. Okay, and then you have say hello here, which when called will print hello there, right? So here you have your class, which is my class. So we put my class here, dot, and then say hello right here, right? Say hello. And so we're just calling this method. And when we call it, it will run, when we call it, it will run this code here, print hello there. So when I hit Control B at the same time, you'll see hello there down here. You know, I try not to overcomplicate things. So let's think of this as like, you know, like, I guess like a box, and then within the box you have your code that's going to execute here, which is print hello there, right? And then when I say call it, you're literally doing that. You're basically calling this class to run, and when it does, then it will execute the code here. So hello there. Okay. So why would we use methods? Well, in Python, you have a lot of methods that are basically created for you. And when you utilize them, like we're going to utilize the title, it will take your like argument, right? And it'll run it through that method. And you'll see this in other languages like C#. where it takes that argument, runs it through the method, and then outputs it, right? And so if I wanted a word and I wanted the first character of that word to be in caps, I may run that through the titles method, right? And you'll see this later, when you run it through the title method, it will then output whatever word you specified, right, out in the format that you want it to be. Okay. Now we're winding back to class methods. Now, what you're seeing here on the screen, it didn't require us to create an instance of the class, right? And so you'll see us, we'll use we'll create an instance of the class. So the next one we'll use will be creating instance methods. So let's go ahead and do that real quick here. We will just modify what we have, and we'll just type self in here. Right. And we'll create an instance here, my instance. So what is an instance? Instance is basically, we're trying to create a reference to the class. So my class here is being referenced by my instance. Okay. Unlike the method which we just created, which didn't require us to create an instance, we're able to just start using the method. Here we have to actually create an instance of that, right? And so next we're going to go ahead and type my instance dot say hello. Okay, so my instance, which when we're referring to my instance, we're actually referring to all this code, which is my class, right? And then we're referring to hello, which as you see here is say hello. So you could kind of, in PowerShell, we would consider this to be kind of like a property. So you would have your code up here, and then, or you have your object, and then below that you would have your properties of that object, right? And I kind of like explain it like you would use it in PowerShell, because it just helps you see it in a easier manner, right? So you have my instance, which is this code here, say hello, which is a property of that code, is here. And then when that is run, because we're calling all of this here, it will print hello there. All right, so let's try it. All right, prints hello there. The only difference is that we had to create an instance of it. In other programming languages, like C#, you'll typically need to create an instance of it. You have to like initialize, declare it. In Python, it's a lot easier, right? I mean, you actually don't have to do that. You don't even have to declare that you're using a string, right? It will know that you're using a string because you put it in quotations. So that's why I want to like using Python, because it already has methods for you to use. So you don't have to, create a bunch of code. I really hope that this helped simplify it. We're basically, let's take a step back. Let's just visualize this as, you have my class, which is all this code up here, right? And then you create an instance of that, which is just a reference. So my instance just references my class, right? It's the same thing. They're basically the same thing. Kind of like a variable. When you call a variable, whatever's in that variable will then be called with it, right? And then here you just have my instance, which is now this class, right? Because we created that instance. Say hello there, which is the code that's going to run when we call it, and that will then print hello there. So next we're going to be using a string method to print a name, except the first letter in that name will be capitalized. Okay, so let's go ahead and do that real quick. So I'm on page 20, and right at the top of the page here, and I am just going to in here. Okay. Oops. There we go. So what we're doing here is we're taking this name here, we're putting in this variable called name, we're then printing name, we're passing it off to the title method. The method, like I mentioned earlier, is then going to take that name and it's going to take it as an input, output it as with the capital A, right? So you see a capital A down here and a capital L. And so the easiest way to think about code is you have your variable and your data type, which in this case, our data type is a string with the quotation marks. Our variable is name, okay? In some cases you have algorithms. We don't have an algorithm here. And then you have your input. And my input is gonna be this name, right? We're inputting it into the title method. The title method will then take that and it will output it as we see here. Okay. So just if you kind of got lost earlier, as long as you can absorb that, we can keep moving forward. All right, so continuing on, at the bottom of page 20, you'll see we're passing the name to the upper and lower methods. So that's what I did here. I just typed print the name, and we're going to pass it over to the upper method, which, as you see down here, will make the name all uppercase. Here, print name, and we're passing it to the lower method, which, as we learned earlier, a method is just pre-made code. And we could take input, give it to this method. This method will then output it the way that we want it. In this case, we want it to be lowercase, and that's what we see here. Okay. All right, so I'm gonna be creating a separate video for page 21, and we'll continue on.